Hello and welcome to this Excel for Apps videocast, Achieving the Rolling Forecast, an incremental approach with rapid results. Within this videocast, we'll cover the following topics. We'll provide a high-level overview of today's state of budgeting, planning, and forecasting at most organizations. We'll compare an annual budget construct against a rolling forecast and evaluate the pros and cons of each approach. We'll discuss some of the most common impediments to achieving rolling forecasts and how these can be mitigated. We'll highlight some of the key differences that separate IT and business when considering planning solutions. And finally, we'll perform a quick demonstration of continuous planning scenarios in an SAP-Connected Excel environment. Let's first discuss the current state of budgeting, planning, and forecasting at most organizations. We'll set the stage with some high-level study findings around returns on investment and benchmarking. This first study was conducted by Gartner and it aimed to identify the expected returns on investment within the planning space. They concluded that companies that invest in purpose-built planning solutions can anticipate the following: an ROI of between 50 and 150%, a payback on investment horizon of 6 to 12 months, and most importantly in my eyes, these organizations realized a 30 to 90% reduction in the duration of their planning cycles, as well as reducing the associated cost of the process by 25 to 75%. Overall, the important takeaway here is that these are much more than merely marginal returns being realized. The second study we'll highlight was performed by the Aberdeen Group, and it aimed to identify the percentage of leading organizations that are currently achieving specific benchmarks related to planning. They found that 96% of best-in-class companies are clearly able to track actual performance against budget, that 82% have the ability to reforecast as market conditions change, that 75% have established enterprise-wide collaboration from the top down and bottom up during the planning process, and that 70% have the visibility to allow for drill down to successive levels of detail. Overall, if your current planning process does not tick the box on each of these benchmarks, then your organization will be classified as a laggard in the planning space. Every organization approaches planning differently, as there is no one-size-fits-all framework that can be generically applied. However, there are most certainly some general best practices to adhere to when developing your planning framework. As a general trend, the perceived importance of planning continues to grow across organizations. Many who analyze the planning space will point to the financial crisis of 2008 as the inflection point that triggered the agile planning movement. According to a survey conducted by BARC, 97% of respondents viewed planning as being important or very important, and 63% viewed its importance as becoming even greater over time. Overall, planning serves as a hugely important instrument to differentiate companies from the competition. In the eyes of many experts, this function is even more critical to the success of an organization when compared with reporting and analysis. This viewpoint is not all that controversial when considering that planning is a forward-facing activity. Planning processes within organizations are overwhelmingly unsatisfactory. An alarming 88% of survey respondents reported having problems with their planning process. The most common issues can be grouped into the following categories. The first category is time, having coordination processes that are too long and having a plan that is already outdated by the time it has been finalized. The latter is extremely damaging, as allocating time and resources to producing what is effectively an inconsequential plan is a complete non-value-added activity. The second category is integration. Long-term strategy is not sufficiently being taken into account for near-term planning and forecasting. This results in near-term activities that do not align with and do not help to achieve the long-term vision. The third bucket is missing functionality. The inability to support multiple scenarios and not being flexible enough to cater to internal or external changes. Both of these issues are directly detrimental to an organization's agility. The fourth category is organization, having employees that are not involved enough in the plan construction. This issue causes severe inaccuracy in budgets and forecasts, as it is often the employees who are closest to the operational activities of the organization that are not being engaged. And the final category is quality. More specifically, having data quality that is insufficient. This issue can most often be attributed to the manual and error-prone mechanisms that are used to extract, transform, and disseminate the data. Clearly, a plan that is built upon flawed actuals or prior budget data is more likely to be inaccurate. Excel is by far the most widely used planning tool today. In fact, 86% of companies report using Excel for their planning process. Unfortunately, relying on Excel alone without any additional planning functionality or database connection is quite risky. The most common pitfalls that occur are a lack of consistent data, a countless number of Excel workbooks, and a high risk of error due to linked workbooks. If data quality risk wasn't enough to disqualify the exclusive use of standard Excel for your planning process, then the time commitment required surely is. On average across these organizations, the number of man days required to perform a specific sub-budgeting activities is the following. 5 days spent providing data, meaning supplying actuals and inputting budget data. 3 days spent processing data, meaning transforming and consolidating data to produce the budget. And then you were left with a mere 3 days to analyze the data, meaning assessing the content of the produced budget. This results in an entire 8 days spent just pushing data around, which is truthfully 8 days too long. These types of repetitive and predictable activities are prime candidates for automation with the right tool in hand. Within any planning framework, flexibility is a must-have. In fact, 84% of organizations report changing their planning processes at least once a year, which is a function of today's constantly changing business environment. This fact underscores the importance of building a flexible planning model that allows your organization to continually adapt and evolve. One of the most important considerations here is ensuring that your planning processes do not require highly specialized skills to change. Having just a single resource with the skills required to write and modify script logic within a BPC environment, for example, is a massive risk. Leverage the skill sets that have depth within your organization when building your planning framework, which overwhelmingly is Excel, but not Excel alone, of course. Most organizations today still utilize an annual planning round approach. This process generally involves the following steps. Corporate strategy is defined by executive management. The strategy is communicated to operations management. Operations provides individual budget inputs while taking into consideration this strategy. Executive management compares strategy to proposed budget and identifies any misalignments. Realignments and fine-tuning occur as necessary to arrive at an approved budget. The approved budget then serves as a control mechanism against overspending, which is a good thing, as well as a baseline to measure performance against, which is a bad thing. All participants are then overwhelmed by a sense of relief, and the process is forgotten about until next year. If most organizations are only executing an annual planning round, then what are leading organizations doing? Leading organizations are increasingly moving toward continuous planning and strategy cycles. These cycles utilize forecasts and relative targets, as opposed to budgets and fixed targets. The most popular approach within leading organizations is producing year-end forecasts, as 81% report using this approach, whereby the prior budget period is replaced by actuals and the outbound months are reforecasted to the end of the fiscal year. The second most popular approach is the rolling forecast, as reported in use by 47% of leading organizations. This concept involves dropping the prior period out of the forecast and adding another period onto the end of the forecast so that you are always forecasting 12 months outbound. Continuous planning allows for managers to better learn from prior forecasts and refine their forecasting techniques moving forward, resulting in improved accuracy. Naturally, as the outbound periods become closer, better information is available compared to when the budget was originally produced. Again, this results in more accurate forecasts. Additionally, continuous planning results in an increase in opportunity evaluations and decision-making cycles. This allows for more frequent evaluations of market conditions and the reallocation of resources to better opportunities. Further, the month-end close becomes more than merely a way of documenting what just happened. Instead, it now doubles as a means of communicating adjustments to be made in the next period. A simple example of this is that a vendor billed us later than expected, so this can be reforecasted into the next period. This continuous revising of expectation allows for fewer surprises and variance explanations, which is a benefit to all involved. Now that I've introduced annual budgeting and rolling forecasting, what are the pros and cons of each? First, on the annual budget side of the ledger. Performance management is treated as a fixed contract. This makes for an unreasonable ask of managers to commit to fixed targets 12 plus months out in a dynamic modern economy. An annual budget serves as an effective spending control mechanism, but it is a very poor measure of performance management once business conditions have changed. Further, in the most dynamic of industries, it is often outdated by the time it's completed. And lastly, spending limits can sometimes do more harm than good, as seeking approval for unbudgeted items wastes valuable time. Conversely, rolling forecasts treat performance management as a relative improvement agreement. The agreement is between executive management and operations to seek continuous improvement, and to use best judgment in adapting to changing market conditions. This pact serves to better maximize expenditure by tactically shifting resources to areas of higher value. Overall, it's great to stay within budget, but it's even better to increase the value of each marginal dollar spent. The only way to achieve this is through continuous planning. And just to be clear, I'm not advocating to eliminate the annual budget, as it has a place within this construct. I'm merely saying that annual budgets are often misused as a tool to go and beat up on management when expenditure didn't meet budget. Also, it should be noted that the shift from annual planning to continuous planning also has a cultural component that goes beyond just leveraging the right technology. The task of getting executive management to buy into the implicit trust and empowerment that is granted to operations management is something that must be considered. Now that I've established that rolling forecasts are the preferred method of planning, why is it that more organizations haven't adopted this? Most often it boils down to the timeless obstacles of time and money. Firstly, planning processes are often made to be excessively complex. While it is certainly desirable, planning at the most granular level of detail can reach a point of diminishing returns. Rather than get lost in the minutiae of every category of expenditure, it is much more achievable to focus on the areas that are of highest leverage. Secondly, planning has historically been viewed as a task that takes time away from other higher priority activities. As mentioned earlier, this perception is shifting as leading organizations are now more likely to view it as a worthwhile investment of time. Thirdly, there exists the perception that the logistics of performing forecasts at a quarterly or monthly interval is not possible. The rationale behind this thought makes sense, as it takes most organizations multiple months to produce an annual budget. However, the key difference lies in continuous planning merely requiring incremental adjustments to the budget, rather than a bottom-up rebuild every time. Once again, if management is empowered, they will use their best judgment in determining when a reforecast is necessary for their business area. If conditions haven't tangibly changed since last month, it is simple enough to merely keep the last forecast while adding a single outbound month onto the end. In terms of money as an obstacle, it is true that you cannot efficiently realize a continuous planning framework without additional investment in a tool. An Excel planning model that is disconnected from SAP proves too cumbersome to process on a monthly interval. Where this obstacle can be misleading, however, is that the additional investment in a tool does not have to be cost-prohibitive. Oftentimes, what is important to IT and what is important to business are not one and the same in terms of planning processes. However, it is hugely important to build consensus between these two groups, as they both have to be moving in the same direction to ensure a positive outcome. Naturally, IT is focused more on the technical considerations of the application, such as how does it fit into the existing landscape, and how difficult is it to implement and support. They demand an integration with the enterprise data, including the use of existing objects, authorizations, and technologies. And lastly, they tend to favor zero-footprint applications. Business is focused on functionality, ease of use, and self-service, not needing to rely on IT so extensively. Business users strongly prefer an Excel-based interface, and ideally one that bears close resemblance to their current planning models. Business demands low training requirements. This isn't because they are lazy, this is because a shorter ramp-up time is much easier to justify. Additionally, turnover within an organization can make an esoteric tool fall into a continuous loop of transition from one resource to another as they merely manage to get up to speed. Business is always going to favor an independence from a data warehouse, as access to real-time data is often their top priority. And lastly, business will always prefer a tool that offers a quick and easy implementation as opposed to a multi-year project. Historically, it has been very challenging to build consensus between these two groups, as SAP's planning applications have always skewed more closely to IT requirements rather than business requirements. This perception is well documented within the SAP community, as business users are immediately skeptical and tend to view these as IT-centric solutions. It is important to note that when formulating our tools, specific attention was taken to be able to tick all of the boxes of what is important to both of these groups. Most organizations that we speak with have a homegrown planning framework that has been built and refined over the course of years within Excel. By simply taking this framework and integrating GL1 and Planning 1, we offer a non-disruptive, painless, and affordable path toward approaching a continuous planning framework. Let's start off with a quick example of achieving a year-end forecast with a combination of GL1 and Planning 1. This template is constructed of 4 distinct components. The first component uses GL1 Get Cost Center Accounting Balance functions to retrieve real-time actuals by cost center and cost element. The functions retrieve data directly from SAP by referencing a combination of sheet, column, and row parameters within the template. The second component of the template allows for either calculated or free-form input of plan values. The third component of the template contains the Planning 1 upload functions, which in this case are load cost plan functions. Just as with the GL1 functions, the Planning 1 functions are also formula-based, and reference the same combination of master data parameters when determining the destination of the plan values. The final component within this template is simply for validation purposes. Once again, GL1 Get Cost Center Accounting Balance functions are used to retrieve real-time data from SAP, but this time it is budget values being returned instead of actual values. The key to applying the combination of GL1 and Planning 1 to a forecasting framework is the nature of the functions being Excel formula-based. Formula-based functions enable the ability to embed standard Excel logic within the template to control both the dimensionality of the upload as well as the values being planned. Using this standard Excel logic, I can apply percentage changes to my prior year actuals to quickly derive my forecast. Additionally, since this is a forecast that is executed on a monthly interval, as each preceding period closes, I can call the actuals via GL1 to actualize those periods and then reforecast the outbound periods. Since the new forecast will be uploaded into SAP in real time, reporting on the new forecast is instantly achievable. Further, if you'd like to see a preview of what the new forecast will look like without actually committing the values to SAP, you can easily set up an Excel watch window to read the budget to new forecast variance cell into any sheet of your workbook. Finally, uploading the new forecast is as simple as one click. Planning 1 has sent the plan values into SAP, and a GL1 refresh is automatically triggered in order to report on the forecast without delay. The mechanics of performing a monthly rolling forecast are largely the same, with the major difference being the Excel logic that derives the periods being planned. As the forecast preparer rolls the current month parameter forward after the close of each period, the prior period automatically retrieves actuals and moves into the historical section of the template, while a new period is added onto the end of the input selection. An added benefit to leveraging GL1 plus Planning 1 for your budgeting and forecasting framework is that by having real-time bidirectional data within Excel, the power of Excel as a dashboarding tool is fully unlocked. Creating pivot tables and charts is an Excel skill that many business users already possess, but does not provide value due to static data extracts. GL1 eliminates this hurdle and allows you to create compelling, live dashboards with only Excel skills required. As you can see, Excel in combination with GL1 and Planning 1 is all that an organization truly needs in order to take what you already have and approach a continuous planning and reporting framework. Excel for Apps offers SAP-specific solutions for both uploading as well as reporting, all from the comfort of Excel. While Planning 1 and GL1 were the stars of this show, we also offer tools for uploading financial actuals from Excel to SAP, as well as a reporting tool for executing T-codes, and queries directly in Excel. We are a global organization with users in more than 75 countries worldwide. We are recognized SAP and Microsoft partners with solution certification in both ECC and S/4HANA. If you'd like to learn more about Planning Wand and GL Wand, please download our Rolling Forecast ebook or visit our Planning Wand product page at excelforapps.com/Planning Wand.